Welcome, everybody. Sorry, I didn't realize we were on, friends. This is a special edition of Left Reckoning. We're going to be talking a little bit about Cornel West running for president. We are joined by my good friend Matt Bleck and Mr. Djene Bajalan. You know him from many places, including This Is Revolution. This is going to be the hot take episode, and as I'm seeing it right now, it looks like we've done a little bit of solidarity to the masses, and I think that we are public. We'll keep it open for everybody tonight as a little June days treat. But if you are sneaking in and getting in, subscribe at patreon.com/Left Reckoning. That support does help us out a lot. But why not? It's the summer. We got good and fun things to talk about, so let's make it public. We're going to be taking calls and questions in just a little bit. Reminder for people leaving us calls, try to keep those on the brief side, especially since it's public. I'll be, of course, checking out the Discord, so you only get access to that if you are a patron.
Yeah, and can I just say on that note, I got 6 calls loaded up here. Probably won't be taking any more just because we got a limited number of time, and we got Djene here. We want to give Djene enough time to cook, and we don't want to be crowded.
We gotta let Djene cook. Cook. He was talking about us cooking a second ago. But yeah, I don't know. We're gonna talk about Cornel in just a second, but let's warm up a little bit with some good old American culture war, because this is a beautiful thing. I mean, should we set this up or should we dive right in with this video here?
Just as setup, I'll just say David has been on this, I think, early. He's the one who said that actually the rights claim to Chick-fil-A is a false one. And now we have confirmation from a right-wing person herself. I don't know who this girl is. We don't need to publicize her actual identity, but this is a very interesting mix of serious things and also a very frivolous approach to life. But there's some great quotes in this.
So I'm grieving. It's lunchtime. I'm here with Aubrey, and we really wanted some Chick-fil-A, but because they decided to hire a diversity, equity, and inclusion corporate position and also bow down to the woke lords because of their ESG scores, and also I found out, do you know this? Their chicken is funded by BlackRock and Vanguard.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, Their farms. They use Tyson and this other farm,
Now, there's enough here. Yes. So now this is there's some funny stuff here. There's so much packed into, and that was just about 20 seconds. Okay. So first off, that they do like ESG and these corporate, basically like don't sue us for racism thing. Like that's also the same reason they do the, hey, don't like chat up the women in the workplace sort of stuff too. Right. It's not really social engineering. It's lawsuit avoidance. So I'll just say but I also say this BlackRock stuff. BlackRock,
good, right?
Their chicken is funded by BlackRock is probably the funniest thing I've heard.
Finance capital chicken.
And it's okay, I mean, I'm interested. First of all, Tyson is a pretty problematic company. You should probably have a problem with Tyson beforehand. There's lots of child labor, lots of just labor abuse and general stuff. Is it the biggest factory farm, a provider of chicken in the country? It's close.
It's not.
I mean, it's also, she should have known, Clinton affiliated. Absolutely 100% there. I'm sure.
Not giving free advice to them.
Exactly. I mean, I'm just saying it's just weird why this activation happened now. And maybe back to Hercules' point, there's something going on here where you can't just say she's like BlackRock. Okay, first of all, there's a whole bunch of these sort of asset management companies. They're all vampires. You can't just say BlackRock is a definite major player in this vampire field.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And again, I think you've made this point. Many other people have made this point. It is so amazing that they fixated on probably the most incomprehensible aspect of right-wing philosophy, which is being against ESG. Which is I mean, I might even need to be reminded what the acronym stands for. It is such an elite concern.
Equitable social governance or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Fuck it. I mean, I could see
environmental, social, and corporate governance.
That shit sucks,
sure.
Right? You know what I mean? But it's they have to hold on to these really strange and incoherent cultural things. I know there's about to be a banger line, so I don't want to flood the field before we get to it, though.
Let's go back a little bit. Let her wind up again.
scores. And also I found out, do you know this? Their chicken is funded by BlackRock and Vanguard.
Are you kidding?
Yeah,
No.
their farms. They use Tyson and this other farm. BlackRock and Vanguard funded chicken. Chick-fil-A, you are no longer the Lord's chicken. You're actually the woke chicken. And I'm really upset about it as a Christian woman. All we wanted was some good fried chicken. So now we're going to go to Cane's. We're going to try it out. This is really difficult because there's a Chick-fil-A across the street. I'm now eating chicken fingers instead of chicken nuggets. I know first world Christian woman problems. No one will ever understand the love that I had for Chick-fil-A. I got my sweet tea with a lemon, and
I like Cane's.
You know, we're taking this boycott.
I've never heard of it.
Chick-fil-A thing seriously, and it's really difficult. I got a 4-finger box combo, extra fries, crispy cane sauce.
I hope the sauce isn't crispy.
Now, I'll just say, like, you're not doing a great job because, I mean, well done for spending your money, your personal money at Cane's.
Yeah.
Let's think about the sum total of your actions, because I don't know if I've wanted Chick-fil-A so badly as I do right now. Like, this idea, like, I think, Djene, you can back. Chick-fil-A is fine. It's, let me unmute Djene because I had to mute it. What's that, Djene?
It's chicken nuggets. I mean, like, that's all it is. It's fancy chicken nuggets, and people lose their mind for it. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know, people give British food a hard time.
Oh no.
And I'm like this is a country where people like lose their minds over some slightly better chicken nuggets cooked in peanut oil. So, you know, if you want to make fun of my bangers and mash and my baked beans, you go ahead. But all you want is chicken nuggets.
So, like, all right, like we'll talk serious in a second, but like let's get into it a little bit here. This is what I think. One of the worst things that ever happened was Chick-fil-A becoming a national brand because it went from being like a Southern restaurant to being, and also like I remember when Chick-fil-A went from being something you could only get at the mall to a drive-through restaurant, right?
Ooh,
Not
fancy.
that I'm old, but it's just like it's gone through some shifts. I don't think people understand that like it's always like this competition. Do you like Bojangles better? Do you like Church's better? Do you like Chick-fil-A?
We have chicken in Iraq.
I bet it's good as hell.
It's
See,
so-
I don't discriminate. I think it's like I love it because like the point here is this: is that like Chick-fil-A, is it like a crispy chicken sandwich compared to like other chicken sandwiches or other fried chicken? No, it's soft, right? It's a little different, but it's got a little sweetness to it. It's good. It plays a role, and you have to open your mind to like the full potential of fried chicken instead of just being one thing and saying it's like saying I only drink whiskey, right, and not drinking wine or beer, right? It's silly. There's a whole spectrum of beauty out there, and you should be able to enjoy it. The funniest thing about Cane's, I will just say this before we maybe talk a little bit more seriously. Funniest things about Cane's is there's Cane's, which it's just chicken tenders. That's it.
Is it like Hurricanes?
It's from Louisiana, so maybe I bet it's something like that. But it's Raising Cane's, right? Like biblical.
Okay.
And then there's Zaxby's.
Yeah, we've got Zaxby's here in Springfield. I've never been.
Zaxby's has expanded a lot recently, and Zaxby's is like, oh no, I mean, I'll just be blunt about it. Like, Cane's is coated more black, and Zaxby's is coated more white. And there's this weird thing where they opened up all these Zaxby's for people who didn't want to go to a restaurant where there was going to be a lot of people of color around them. That was basically like Cane's, exactly the exact same thing, right? It's chicken tenders, a sauce where they could go and whatever. So it's very funny that they went to Cane's as the alternative to Chick-fil-A. Look, they're becoming more progressive. But I don't know. I think it's awesome that the right wing is eating itself. Like literally, they're unable to drink Bud Light. They're unable to eat Chick-fil-A. You know, I'm all for it, dude. As somebody who loves Americana and loves good American brands and like eats like a normal person and drinks like a normal person, if all these things can start getting coded as left wing, I'm here for it, baby.
Bro, I'm just realizing how funny it is. Hillary Clinton's connection. There was a cattle futures deal.
Yeah, it was a real scandal.
Yeah, and like she got off with the help of her investment advisor, James Blair, outside counsel to Tyson Foods. So this whole like homophobic era where it's like, hey, relax, libs. It's just a chicken sandwich, okay? we're fooling folks to basically eat Clinton chicken.
Clinton chicken. No, we should get on TikTok, Matt. Like, create secret accounts and just like fuel the right wing.
Have a voice modulator and do like exposés on finance capital's desire to impose woke chicken on people.
Yeah,
I mean, what's
I'm
a
gonna
woke?
go.
What's a
But we need
woke
to get
chicken?
we need to get investment from Popeyes or something. We can't do this for free, guys.
Dude,
We can't.
Popeyes is like I could be wrong about this. This is not my field of expertise, right? But I think that Popeyes is a little cynical. The guy who opened it is like a white guy. And he was just like, what do people like in Louisiana? You know what I mean?
They're like chicken.
Yeah, I don't think like the fact that Popeyes has sort of become like in people's minds like this woke progressive company, like because I'm
Right.
sorry, the left does the culture wars too. Like I love Popeyes too, just as much as the next guy. But look, we do it, but they do it harder, I guess.
That's what I'm saying. We need to get serious about this. If Crown Fried Chicken wants to pay us to
No one's gonna know that except for you and me.
to spread misinformation about Tyson Foods and Chick-fil-A to confuse the right wing, I'll give you my bank details.
There you go.
Well, Chick-fil-A, welcome to the atheist side. You are no longer the Lord's chicken, but you are very good, friend.
You are now the woke chicken.
The woke chicken. Yeah.
All right. Well, we did that. Set us up. I'm trying to think of an easy transition, but we're just gonna jump into it. I mean, this is the conversation that everyone wants to have. Cornel West is running for president, and like I do want to like take a little bit of time on this because like I mean I think it's like completely serious. I do think there's been a kind of hilarious like Twitter flame war around it that we can maybe get into, but maybe we could talk a little bit more seriously in a second. I want to throw to y'all to hear your thoughts and maybe just to kick it off. I'm just going to say right up here, I've been very public about how disappointed and frustrated I am that he's associating himself with the People's Party, and we could talk more in depth about why in a second. But just putting my chips on the table, one of the easiest things I will probably ever do is if I walk into a polling place and it is Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Cornel West. Selecting Cornel West to be the president of the United States will be the easiest vote I've ever cast. So putting myself on the my cards out on the table, but I want to hear what y'all think, and then maybe we could talk a little bit more in depth as to like what we think it means, the associations, etc. But maybe Djene, you could start.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Cornel West running. I think it's totally good to have somebody putting out ideas. I mean, I'm not on, I'm not totally on board with everything Cornel West might stand for, but I think it's perfectly legitimate for him to run, and I'm glad he's running.
Mm-hmm.
The People's Party, I'll put my cards on the table. I don't know that much about them, but it just seems like just another pointless political vehicle. But it is what it is, I think from my perspective, I think there's going to be some quite vicious attacks on Cornel West. And I think, my basic position will be is like, yeah, I might not be a fan of the People's Party, and I don't vote anyway because I'm not an American citizen. But, leave Cornel alone, let him do his run. And he'll do his own thing. He often he seems kind of oblivious to the online world. So people are like, oh, how did he get involved with all these things? I don't think he follows this kind of stuff very closely. He doesn't know who X, Y, and Z is. He's busy doing his Cornel West thing. I mean, I'm excited about his house music album. That's what I'm waiting for. But I think it's fine for him running. I think the bigger criticism might be that just running as a People's Party candidate might not get the press that he wants, to get the message out. I mean, my hot, spicy take on this was that he should have run in the Republican primary. I think that would have been awesome. I think he could have just run in the Republican primary and got on that debate stage. I think it would have been hilarious. I mean, my meta point would be, it's like,
just to jump in, they're not going to have debates. DeSantis and Trump won't be on a debate stage, I'm pretty sure. Trump's not going to do it. But anyways.
But, whatever happens, I mean, I think the bigger point is that maybe we should stop caring that much about presidential politics maybe instead of worrying about presidential politics so much, we should be recognizing our weak position and trying to organize in different ways, because I think so much energy gets soaked up into these presidential election campaigns that, I think and kind of no hope presidential campaigns. It's not like anyone thinks that Cornel's going to win. It's a messaging campaign. So, let's just take it for what it is, a messaging campaign, and defend Cornel West against the slanders that are going to be put against him. Yes, the People's Party is problematic, but I think that's a second order issue at the moment when it comes to Cornel West. And I think it's good that he's running. Maybe he could have run as a Democrat, but again, are the Democrats going to have debates? I don't think they want Kennedy on the stage, or the Crystal Lady on the stage, whose name is escaping me.
Be nice, Marianne.
Marianne. I mean, I think presidential politics is kind of a dead end as a focus for our hopes and dreams. And I think we should, as people on the left, take kind of stance that Cornel West has the perfect right to run. And even if the People's Party is problematic, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are more problematic in many ways. So it is what it is. I mean, he could have run as a Green, I suppose. I don't know. But he's running a presidential campaign. And if it's a messaging campaign, if it's going to help people organize, great. But I think we're just going to see a lot of people dogging on Cornel, because everybody likes the radical, preachy Black activist who believes in social justice until they actually get involved in a political process, and then they don't like him anymore. They like them to, it's like, Angela Davis, radical back in the day. Now she can go to Martha's Vineyard because she's been totally politically neutralized. And, Cornel West hasn't been politically neutralized, and he's running. And so I think there's just going to be a lot of vicious attacks on him. And I think we need to just say, look, whatever issues you might have with the crew behind the People's Party, let's just focus on the fact that, look, this is a presidential election, and he has every goddamn right to run in this presidential election. And, beyond that, there's not really much else to say.
Well, we do have much more to say, Djene.
Well,
wait, before, just really fast, because I want you to say your kind of opening bit here. I will just say, Ben says, every few months I remember that Cornel West was in the Matrix sequels playing himself, Counselor West, which is very true and awesome. We'll also just say, if I'm assuming this has been Ben, very welcome to join. If you want, just text me and I will send you a link if you want to hang out a little bit. But I'm curious, Matt, your reaction and thoughts. I know you were a little out of it yesterday. I felt bad blowing up your phone to hear your.
I had some food poisoning issues, but yeah, no, I mean, I think generically it's a lot of it is what's similar to what we said to Marianne, which is it's uncouth and weird to be constantly on attack mode on this, but ultimately there are limitations to presidential campaigns like this, basically about messages. With regards to Marianne, I think Cornel is more ideologically closer to me. So that's the interesting thing. It's becoming quite a crowded field for particularly online left, which flavor you want between RFK, Marianne, and then Cornel. I think the People's Party thing, I think it's malpractice to suggest people devote their money or time to it, given what has burbled up about it over the past few years. But the two things I will say about it is, one, good name, and two, if Cornel takes off in any real way that made this anything more than an ideas flood the zone campaign, then I think Cornel would have the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to clean house, and we're not going to do the make people sign NDAs, and we're not going to have any shady behavior, and this is my party now. So I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think the party thing is too big a deal. Unless something comes up with it that is embarrassing to Cornel, which would I think be problematic. But I think Djene's point is I'm pretty much in agreement with that. I think yeah, we know it, and I think I don't think people should given what I've seen about that, and I don't want to be too specific because just allegations are allegations, but it doesn't seem like a great use of time. And even just generically, the presidential politics outside bid thing, like, how much are we going to put our faith in that? And it's nice to have ideas out there. I do appreciate that. It gives us something to talk about, to fill our segments with, but I don't know how much where's it generally going to lead.
So, two quick things. One, quick news: Mr. Ben Burgess will be joining us in just a second. So it's a party, friends. Really looking forward to that. But okay. I've been having a hard time with this news, trying to figure out how I want to play it. Because like, I will just say this: I think out of any kind of major political figure, somebody who has some level of mass appeal, Cornel West is probably as close to like a Bernie level figure as you're going to get, in the sense that like he's somebody who like normal people generally like. I think sometimes though it's important. I think a lot of lefties see that appeal. But I don't think he has as much like name recognition as we might assume. People who are really clued in, I think it's a little bit limited. But neither did Bernie. No one knew who Bernie was before. But he has a great ability to be on camera and make a point and be charismatic, right? So somebody who can maybe push things forward, continue to making these points, I think is somebody who's very easy. And as I said, like very easy for me generally to as like an individual to support voting for him. I will say, to echo what y'all have been saying, like I do think that like the fixation on presidential politics for the left has been bad. I think it's given us bad strategic impulses. I think everyone thinks of things as solely media campaigns, right? Which is, especially when it seems like a long shot. I think the idea is like everyone has heard about Medicare for all at this point. What people don't believe is that it's viable. And doing more long shot campaigns, I don't think necessarily opens up as many doors as people think. The thing that I think is going to be really, then what's the benefit, right? Like, let's say we were involved, for example, which we aren't, right? Because we're not involved in anything when it comes to general strategy. We just talk, right? What is like the benefit? I mean, like I always said when we were talking about if Bernie was going to do a third run, I always said one of the best things about having Bernie run was to sort of block some of the other non-socialist voices who want to inherit Bernieism, right? Or the Bernie movement. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Cornel, as you've seen, because of like what he's attached himself to. I do think totally that I think that you can overstate the People's Party thing as like, oh, this is like this big threat. I don't think it's a big threat. More than anything, my worry about it, and this is speculation, right? Just be very clear legally, that like there could be potential of scandal, knowing what I know, both that's been public and things that I've heard privately, about that institution, that could hurt. Like, let's imagine that like maybe a lot of people do really vibe with it and it starts polling at like 20-30%, right? Which would be good. Lord, if associating yourself with an organization that has had issues in the past and then new things develop in the future sort of hurts that. I mean, that's just why do it. I guess like for me, it's like knowing the baggage around it. Why do it? Because it doesn't give you ballot access. It's not shown itself to be a very effective movement in terms of like winning elections, right? They don't run. So, why associate yourself with it? Because if it were to become viable, and like, I think there's a very good, like, we don't know yet because it's like day 2, right? Is this a pure messaging campaign or is this like, we're going to try to win thing? I think it's probably very difficult for them to like put, could more likely than not messaging, right? But let's just assume for a second it's not. He would have to build up the apparatus. He'd have to build up the ground game. He'd have to build up the institutions. He'd have to build up the donor base. He'd have to do all that stuff. Cornel West. Why associate with, if you're going to do all the work, if you're going to build up the thing, like, fuck, like, do Socialist Party 2.0. Cornel West founds like the new Democratic Socialist Party of America, or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
That's like my big thing. And look, I think those are hurdles that can be overcome. Everyone's been people have been attacked. It's so, I mean, like, I shouldn't be too self-centered, but it's always amazing, like, because it doesn't matter what you say. I'm literally like, I think that like Cornell is an easy yes vote for me when it comes down to it. I worry literally if the strategy has the potential of reaching maybe some of the high hopes, maybe they're optimistic hopes. But I just don't see like much positive coming from this. Maybe he can beat it, but again, it's like, why add a trial, to this quest at the beginning?
Immediately.
Yeah.
Playing on hard mode. Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we don't know the circumstances in which they asked him. Maybe they asked him, who knows? I mean, I don't know the circumstances about how he became, quote unquote, the People's Party nominee. But, we don't know those circumstances. And like I say, I'm focused. My position is simply to be focused on saying, like, he has every right to run, and you don't have to vote for him. But, I'm glad he's exercising his right to run for president. I think that's totally fine.
I mean, could you defend that a little bit, Djene, though? Because I'm not going to be rabid, so attack dog, but like devil's advocate, because I agree with you completely. Like, there's already been, knives out from the liberals, the MSNBC crowd. Of course, they're just like they're saying Marianne Williamson's a spoiler.
Yeah, I mean, that's
daring to. Yeah, sorry, what it is.
Yeah, I mean, my point is going to be this: it's look, whether you're on the left and you think that we should be operating through the Democratic Party or not through the Democratic Party, I'm pretty fine with whatever people want to do. I think we as the left are pretty powerless in that respect. So they're going to attack anyone who isn't towing the MSNBC line, whatever the case is. And I just think our political task is to say no. You don't get to like bully people in this way out of the nominee. You shouldn't try and pressure people out of doing their own presidential run. I mean, yeah, you want to talk about the People's Party being corrupt? Fine. Let's talk about other parties. Let's talk about what goes on in the Democratic Party. Let's talk about what you want to talk about corruption. Let's talk about corruption. And so I think, we should be focusing on the fact that, hey, Republicans, Democrats are monopolizing the access to the ballot. That's a problem, right? Mm-hmm. I think we should use this as a leverage to say, like, hey, it's kind of problematic that if you want any chance of running, you have to like sign up for one of these two private institutions that have no democratic accountability, but yet monopolize access to the ballot. And so, I am, I agree there's all these problems, and maybe the People's Party is gonna make some issues for Cornel, but I kind of feel like he's damned if he was running for the Green Party, they would say the same stuff. If you ran in the Democratic Party primary, you said it. They're saying it already about Marianne Williamson, acting as if she doesn't have a right to run. They're they're attacking Kennedy. We should be saying no. Like, we should be defending democracy in the sense of trying to say, like, no, these things should be as open to as many people as possible. And you don't have a kind of right to, you can't, Cornel West has just as much right as anybody else to run. And, if he takes a couple of votes here and there and lets the Republicans win, well, that's not Cornel's problem. That's your problem, right? Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, like that's my feeling on it too, but I'm curious, like, Matt, I know you might not be in total agreement with that.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's all fair enough. I think the problem is, like, it'd be easier to make that if, like, and again, like, I agree, like, right to run, but like the ballot access thing, like the Green Party at least does something about that. Right, like, and I think that's just like that reservation. It's not one like that I think is the most important one to emphasize, but it's like when I'm assessing how excited I can get for what this can actually build, it's like it's easier to make that if it wasn't like Nick Brana bullshitting around and not getting on a single ballot, because the truth is you're not going to get a chance to vote for Cornel unless you write him in.
I mean, who knows when it comes to independent? Yeah, no, I mean, it's a huge uphill battle. I want to bring on our good friend and comrade, Mr. Ben Burgess onto the program to join in the fun. Thanks, Ben. I love a little impromptu quadrant going on. We very rarely have 4 people on at once, so this is great.
Well, yeah, thank you. You get to see the extremely bare walls of my new apartment. For this.
That's a real scholar's wall. You know what I mean? Like everyone puts books and bullshit up. Like a real scholar's wall, there's nothing but paint. Ben, I mean, I don't know if you caught any of this before, but we were all sort of laying out our general feelings. But I figured, just to bring you in, if you could,
Sure.
give people your judgment.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I largely agree, especially with your first comment. Like, if, like, let's say that the People's Party people do, and look, I don't know very much about the People's Party. The tiny bit that I do know is off-putting. I mean, this is like right on the border of a joke that you shouldn't tell on air, but like I have but like I always kind of vaguely assumed it was a tax scam or something. But I guess if they're actually running people now, then maybe not. Wow. But but like if they actually do get their shit together and Cornel West is on the California ballot next fall, then I will most certainly vote for him. And then if like that, and I would love to do that. Like that would be amazing, right? I mean, like get the yes, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, or former TNBS guest Cornel West. That's a very easy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a very easy choice. But like, I also don't think much is going to come out of it. Unfortunately, I mean, like it might if he ran, on a major party like primary. Then again, it might not. I mean, Djene's right. They are, both parties are trying to, well, at least the Trump people, the DeSantis people, the Republican Party, and then the Biden people, which just kind of is the Democratic Party right now, are trying to stitch it up. So there won't be any debates or anything like that. But, so maybe even if Cornel did run as a Democrat, it wouldn't make a difference. But, I think he'd have like a greater chance of being visible there. But, I also do, agree. I don't want to repeat too much what's already been said, but it's like I also do agree that just this like fixation on presidential elections, it's like probably a good time to let it go, because I think that like unless something really surprising happens, I don't think much is going to happen for the left this cycle on the presidential level.
Yeah, I mean, like I will say that, like, my frustrations with him selecting the People's Party, and like I don't even want to make that into too much fixation. I think I've been very clear that like I have real issues with that institution just from what I've seen out of it. Doesn't seem to be very serious about building a really well-rooted movement like in the working class. It's just sort of like, what if we caught people who were like ingesting a lot of alternative media, basically, which is like a lot of people watch that, don't get me wrong, but like, no, that's not the masses, right? The masses is not watching Russell Brand or our program or any of these things generally.
I mean, look, if you actually look at the numbers, and the masses aren't even watching Fox and MSNBC.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Is that what you're gonna say, Matt?
Yeah. Actually, I forgot my point.
Well, I mean, but like, I do think that like what's frustrating about this is like, out of anybody who's like potentially, oh yeah, go ahead, Matt.
So I got it. Like, I also think like the alternative media is probably the only reason we're talking about as much about these folks as, because like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't remember a incumbent president like there being any talk. Like Bernie got hit a lot because he like hinted at it vaguely in 2012, supporting a primary, but like it's a new thing. So like maybe that's an argument to like participate in this a little bit, because I don't remember, like, I don't know, George W. Bush's Republicans or Bill Clinton's Democrat. I mean, I was too young, but like I don't remember that even being a thing, because that was probably a legacy media thing. We're not going to even talk about them, and the parties have them stitched up.
Yeah, I mean, back in the 70s, it used to be a thing. I mean, there was Reagan when he ran the first time was primaried Ford, and Ted Kennedy primaried Jimmy Carter in 1980, which is like as a sign of how dismal the political options were back then. Michael Hill, the founder of DSA, actually supported Ted Kennedy. in that race is like the relatively lefter option.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a long time, and look, I would love it if there was a real primary, and and I do think that Cornell would probably have a slightly better chance of breaking through in that way than Marianne
I think
Williamson,
so.
like who whatever. I mean, I actually got to meet Marianne Williamson recently, but
Yeah, and your insider journalism festival.
yeah, my yes, one of the my Access Media event. Yeah, seemed like a real nice lady. I have nothing bad to say about her, but I mean, like, I don't. I would be beyond shocked if she like became a major factor in the election.
Well, I mean, like, I want to like talk a little bit more about like Cornell in a second, but like because like it's the elephant in the room. It's like the reason that this is like controversial or whatever for some people, beyond the people's part. So I think at this point, like we sort of laid our issues with that, and if anyone has anything that's screaming, bring it back up again later. But I think we could almost move on from it and just act as if he's running independent, because I think hopefully. Um, Practically that's hopefully how he's running his campaign. It'll be real bad, I think, if he's letting some people who I don't think are very good at politics like run his presidential campaign. But it's this other question that like I'm just gonna like put like my cards on the table, and I'd be curious what our interloper non-American thinks about this.
Jesus.
But this I think one thing that like I'm trying to think of like upsides. I think I'm very like I am not impressed by messaging campaigns at this point. I just think that like at a certain point, like there's been enough messaging and this fixation that we're gonna do messaging campaigns. It's just like we'll be doing that forever. But on another thing that we'll be doing forever until like the radical left and even the progressive left, I think, can get some backbone, is this constant relitigation of 2004, and 2016, which is this idea that anybody may be putting up a challenge outside of these two parties is therefore one, a spoiler, and two, like responsible for somebody not being able to shore up support. My opinion on this is very simple, which is like, Hillary Clinton did not lose because of Jill Stein. Hillary Clinton lost because of Hillary Clinton's campaign. And I say that even if, for example, the numbers for Jill Stein are higher. If Jill Stein, right, somebody who, for in a lot of reasons you could look at it, maybe say is like a little strange or a little odd, maybe not somebody who should be the president, is able to convince enough people, because you're assuming, one, that all those people are going to vote for the Democrats, right, in that election. If they're able to beat them, that means that they didn't do what they needed to do to win the voters who are in play. That's my just like end of the road conversation on all of this. And like the left seems to be in a position of like perpetually forever just like relitigating that, where it also becomes the job of the left to say don't step outside of these kind of boundaries. But I'm curious what other folks have to say, because I know like Ben sort of made arguments around this in 2020. I know Matt has opinions on this, but like maybe we start with the guy who has real foreign influence playing into him, Djene, to hear what he has to say.
I mean, I think the utility of messaging campaigns is over. I think good on Cornel West, but what's he going to do? Is it going to lead to more organization? Is it going to lead to, what's it going to lead to? Right. I don't really know. My point would probably be is that, we had a shot with the kind of like the Bernie thing, and, that didn't work out. That's fine. It is what it is. But we need to kind of redouble our efforts. I mean, the way I would look at it, I would say like, we need to make it abundantly clear that, what you were talking about, David, is this idea from the Democratic Party establishment that they're entitled to the votes of the left, and that we should vote for them. And if we don't vote for them, we're petulant children just letting the Republicans in. And I would probably make the case that, until, if we're going to pursue a kind of push the Democratic Party to the left strategy. I think there's no getting around the fact that we have to be willing to let Democrats lose. Because if you're not willing to let Democrats lose, I'm not sure what leverage you have, right? And if we end up acting as the kind of shock I mean, I like Ben's approach in the election. He's like, yeah, I think I'm going to vote Democrat in a swing state, but, I'm not going to shame anyone who doesn't vote Democrat. Like that's entirely up to them. I think we should have a very kind of aloof attitude towards presidential elections. And I think it should be, we should be clear that, this is not really our politics. And my sort of impulse would be, in this moment, I think our primary task is actually to build up the left in civil society, follow this kind of neo-Kauskian approach of, look, we can't, like, this is a problem. And I think you touched on it with Alex earlier.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of leftism, for understandable reasons, because we're so politically weak, has become appealing to the manager, right? We're going to appeal to the state to do things for us. And when you appeal to the capitalist state to do things, it's kind of devil's bargain. So I'd make that devil's bargain on healthcare. If I thought there was a shot,
Right.
if there was a shot for some healthcare, I would make the devil's bargain. I'd be like, look, I'm gonna vote for this person because, like, I want the healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are other things I wouldn't make the devil's bargain on, and I don't think Biden has earned the votes of the left.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people, and it's a difficult thing to say, but it's like, maybe we just have to, like, remain aloof and, let the Democrats hang themselves, for
Metaphorically.
Metaphorically, let them do their own thing, and we should expend our political energies elsewhere rather than relitigating presidential elections or going over with a fine tooth whether or not this person should run or that. We should just say, like, it is what it is. Maybe you want to vote Democrat because you're scared of the Republicans. Maybe you don't want to vote Democrat because you find them disgusting. Either way, whatever. This isn't really our political focus. Let's focus on doing what we can at a civil society level to try and build up something that can actually, either, if you think this is, and I'm not a strategist, I'm not into strategery, but political strategy. Either if you want to push the Democratic Party left, they're not going to be pushed left unless there's a big movement in civil society that can hold them accountable and that's willing to let them lose in order to force concessions. Or, if you don't think the Democratic Party is the vehicle, we use our basis in civil society to try and build a socialist party. But I don't think hyperfixating and rerunning, having a dream of 2016, how it all felt in 2016, because I think it's a feeling that people had, feeling of political advance from, I feel a lot of the tensions on the left were kind of suppressed between 2016 and 2020 because of A, Trump, and B, because people still had this hope for the Bernie campaign. Mm-hmm. That moment is over. And, as we were saying with Turkey, the conditions that existed then don't exist now. And I think we have to look to the future rather than looking to the past. Look to what worked, what didn't work, and because I think we need to recognize we're in a pretty dire situation as the left. I think the mainstream of the left, and Ben will attest to this, is, with this whole question of free speech and stuff, does come down to appealing to the refs. My good friend Doug Lane is always going on about the kind of misinformation, and he's a little hysterical about it. But I think there's a point there. A little is the point, but is maybe not. But I think there is a point there because there may be disinformation that, for very concrete reasons, we want to have suppressed. And I would definitely say there are lots of things that I would like not to see, but because we don't have a civil society left that can counter these things within society, we're making it. It's a dangerous bargain to appeal to the state to censor something, because even if the line that they're drawing at the beginning is one that would say is politically defensible, it's never going to stay there. It's always going to expand. So I don't think that's a place you'd want to make a devil's bargain on appealing to the manager. And I think we have to really get out of the mindset of appealing to the state and the Democratic Party to resolve problems, and instead concentrate on building some kind of robust left-wing civil society. What that looks like, I don't know. Again, I don't think you can just redo the German SDP model, which in the end capitulated to the Kaiserreich. But I think there was something you could learn from that, right? Yeah. I think there are things that you can learn from that, and I think we have to really reassess what we want to do as a left, as a political strategy, and we have to recognize the position that we're in, because Bernie was a shortcut. We were hoping he would be a shortcut, and I don't think it didn't play out like that. And we don't want, whether it's our intention or not, and my friend Vaughn talks about this a lot, we don't want to end up being used as the shock troops of the Democratic Party.
And I think that's a really, really dangerous thing that I think a lot of people falling into. And like on that, just to bring him in on that, Ben Burgess, as a loyal Democrat, as Jack is accusing you in the chat. I mean, I'm curious.
Yeah,
I'm curious. What your feelings are on what Djene was just saying, but maybe like to start, like specifically on this question on like the presidential election, potentially third party voting, because like you did make arguments around this. I mean, I remember like the last time I think we had this this exact conversation, it was like you, me, Matt, and Michael talking about this, and like I'm curious like where you fall given things that you've said in the past on this question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I will say, like Djene said, a lot of things I agree with. One thing I might push back a little bit on is just this idea about leverage. Just because I don't think the track record is great. And I also think like I'm never really been sure why anybody thought the goal was to push Democrats to the left. I don't really think that should be. I don't really think that should be our project anyway. I think it's kind of not going to happen, or to the extent that it is going to happen, it's only as a byproduct of other things. Like if the Democrats means like centrist Democrats or Joe Biden's and people who judges and all those people, right? I mean, like ideally, I don't want to push them into the left. I want to defeat them. To have them not hold power anymore. That should be the goal. And so, I mean, Djene is absolutely right. I mean, my position about this has always been that if somebody asks me for my like tactical advice, I'll give it to them. But one thing I have no interest in doing is like scolding anybody for making different calculations once they're actually inside the voting booth. I think, but I honestly think liberals and ultra leftists both over moralize like this.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Ben, but people think I'm a Democrat for saying like, actually, you motherfuckers are blaming voters too. And like, I just not here for either of that. I just think like I think the aloof thing is the right response. Because like stop making it the totemic significant fucking thing about people's political identities.
Totally. And I think that I think that's very, very well said. I don't think it's that big a thing. I think that like treating how people vote, and particularly how they vote in presidential elections, as this like big defining thing about their politics is just kind of goofy. I think that if I were, in 2020, I was living in a swing state, and so I figured, okay, what do I care about long term the most? Like, what do I think needs to change the most? Because like by the time you're in that situation, you've already lost. right? I mean, it's not like there's something that you could do when you're in the ballot box that's going to make you not have lost. Like you already lost.
No, there's a special combination. If we just fill it out right, it'll do a cheat code when it goes through Scantron, and it'll be like, "Ooh, communism now."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think
even the oh sorry, Djene, I was just going to say even the mild social democratic thing we tried to do was defeated in 2020, and so by the time we got to the general election, we'd already lost. And the question was what to do with that. And my feeling, that, and I think this has kind of panned out, honestly, I feel pretty good about this, is that, okay, I basically think that Joe Biden I always thought of him as I always thought he was going to do Obama Part 2. I always thought he was a neoliberal warmonger and all this stuff. But based on the difference between Trump's appointees and Obama's appointees and Bush's appointees, it was very obvious to me that, if Trump won again, right, we'd have more union busters on the National Labor Relations Board. And because Democrats, even though they're a capitalist party, they're pursuing a different strategy. So I think that, I think it actually does give some breathing room for workplace organizing. And frankly, I know that this is just not the kind of thing that people are usually tracking in online arguments about this stuff, but it actually is a good thing that we don't have Trump's NLRB as all these hundreds of Starbucks were being unionized across the country. I mean, that this is actually slightly better terrain. That doesn't mean that Joe Biden's not an enemy of the working class. Of course he is. I mean, he stopped the rail strike, but that does make a difference, which is why, again, if anybody asked me, my advice, if you lived in one of the tiny handful of states where it mattered, was to do that. But I'm also not interested, but also next year, I'm going to be voting in California. It could not fucking matter less. Mm-hmm. If Cornel doesn't make it onto the ballot, I'll vote for Gloria Riviera or whatever her name is from, the PSL, and I'm also just totally uninterested in yelling at voters either for voting either for voting Democrat like the ultra left version or for voting third party like the other version. I think that's bad politics. I think it's a bad way to approach people, and I think it's I don't know. I always I liked your comment earlier, David. I kept thinking. I know this is kind of an airy fairy reference, but I kept thinking about this Bertolt Brecht poem from 1953. After the general strike in East Berlin, where she's talking about the party posting leaflets around the city saying that people have to work hard to regain their confidence, and he ends it by saying, "Wouldn't it be simpler to simply dissolve the people and elect another?" And it's no, motherfucker, people aren't voting for you. Don't get mad at them. I mean, it's your job to appeal.
I mean, and that's generally where I stand. I mean, I will say on the defensive voting or things I definitely understand that strategy, and I respect it. I will say there's a thing that I think has to be understood with Biden, and this isn't an advocacy for doing either thing, but Biden has effectively made a lot of Trump's, for example, immigration policies permanent, right? Yeah. Some of the nastiest ones. Mm-hmm. And there's something that happens in the public discourse that even on the left, right? But I think more broadly in the mainstream, it's oh, well, there's definitely reasons for it, right? Well, what the reason is because he's the head of empire, and these are tactics that are useful for the head of empire, right? Be they triumphant and celebrated like they are under Trump, or if they're quiet and they have an app like they are under Biden. So I think that on the morality question of it, that I think it's worthwhile to I'm not even saying as counterpoint in the sense of don't do anything, but I do think sometimes that can be very overstated. I'm not saying by any of y'all out here, but people really overstate that point in my opinion. Because you look at what happens. I think one thing all four of us agree on very much is that at the second that you walk into that polling place and there is no workers movement, there's no workers party, there isn't anything like that on the ballot, you've already lost. Right. So my opinion is I generally could care less. I never felt it to be my position to tell people to do one thing or the other. I will just say this though. If that is the case that we all agree on, and I'm not accusing anyone on this panel of this, then there are loud sections of the left who do find that to be their job, and I do wish they would be way quieter about this, because like there I don't want to get into this stuff, but like there are like two really loud factions on the online left, we'll call them, right? Some people who maybe were like forced to vote folks, Jimmy people who are mad at anyone for saying anything bad about the People's Party, who like they believe in like parliamentary democracy or whatever, and even in the parties in a way that I think is even stronger than any of us do, right? Because I think that there is some kind of secret combination of tactics that is going to maybe change those parties. I think that's not going to happen. And then there's another section that's like, well, I agree with all the criticisms of the Democratic Party. I think that they're bad, and maybe we can fight and build something tomorrow, but today we have to do this. And they spend a lot of their time basically attacking people who say like, I want to do something different in the current moment. And for me, I guess what I'm saying is like, that's a really loud, like friendships are lost over that debate.
Mhm.
Friendships, people don't talk to each other anymore over where they fall on that. And for me, I find it to be one of the least material positions ever, because like even in this best case scenario, I mean, like what we do with movement candidacy for 30%, I will happily generally support something like that, because I think it opens up some doors. But I also like am not going to delude myself into thinking that this is even doing like the level of politics that we need to be doing. It comes back to like, for me, I guess like the question of what you do in that situation is very immaterial to me on like maybe base building or party building and all those other kind of things. And it's frustrating to me how that ends up being the door or like the test on either side as to like whether or not somebody wants to see society change. And I think that all I'll say is that like we criticize some of those people on the other side who think that like we're going to do this big protest vote and it's going to change history, right? And I think that that's not correct. But I also will just put a challenge out that I think people who line up on the other side like are very passionate about being on that other side sometimes in a way that I don't find to be particularly helpful.
Yeah, it's not worth passion. I mean, I like James' emphasis on civil society. I mean, I think that I think like organizing most obviously and most importantly in the workplace, but I mean also as tenants, and also in whatever. It's it's an imperfect organization. Nobody needs to tell me that like goofy things have happened there, but like I think stuff like DSA, is like I think that all that matters so much more than whatever you do. Yeah, during those 30 seconds that you spend in the ballot box, with like god awful choices that left to you by this like weird half democratic system.
Yeah. It's like musical chairs, and then the election day is when the music's out, and it's like shit. This is the few chairs that are available to me left open. I mean, that's not a great metaphor, but go ahead, Gene.
No, and ultimately, when it comes to the voting, there's two philosophies behind it, right? There's the harm, there's the kind of popular front harm reduction idea, and there's the we're not going to work with the social fascist idea, right? And the thing is, if we go back, and I just want to point this out for all these like Catboy Stalinists calling everyone Democrats. It's like y'all been voting for the Democrats since 1936, so just check yourself before you wreck yourself. But my position would be, on the harm reduction, it's a difficult call to make.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to the Popular Front, maybe the Popular Front was what you needed to do in Germany, right? Before 1936, right? But it was certainly a disaster when applied to the United States, because it meant that you kind of liquidated yourself into the racist Democratic Party, especially in the South, right? So there's a kind of, flexibility, I think, like there's going to be all these debates. Somebody in the chat was like, oh, you don't care, the Republicans will get in and thousands will die. It's like, well, guess what? I live in Missouri and Republicans are already in, and a lot of the stuff that makes people die is a state level issue anyway, right? The president is not going to be coming in and, doing all this kind of stuff in Missouri. So it's kind of like my point about letting Democrats lose. It's like, look, if you're in West Virginia, I'll be honest, rather have a Republican than Joe Manchin, right? And the reason I'd rather have a Republican than Joe Manchin or a Republican instead of Kirsten Sinema, because then you're just removing the kind of you're removing the charade of like this kind of centrist Democrats. If you want to pursue the electoral strategy, I think it has to come with punishment. Like you have to say, yeah, sorry, you voted against the stuff that we supported, so we're just not going to support you anymore. And that, if you want to do that strategy, but if you priori say that we'll always vote for the Democrat, then why would anyone ever listen to you? You just, you're a captured block. It's a difficult one to make, because people will guilt trip you, because Democrats, the Democratic establishment,
they live on it. I think they thrive on it. I think
they're like the mafia. They're like the mafia, because they say to you, they say, look, if you don't vote for us, we're not going to give you anything, but we're not going to, the rate of pressure is going to be perhaps reduced a little bit. And if you don't vote for us, we're going to let the Republicans do what the Republicans are going to do. And so, you end up in this moral, you don't want to see people suffer. And you do want to see better terrain upon which workers can struggle. But at the same time, it's like, if that's your like permanent position, you'll never get anywhere. Because you're a captured voting block that they can depend on, and that they can guilt you into voting. Like, I don't know when it's right to do a popular front strategy, and I don't know when it's right to do a third position strategy as the left. Like, I'm not a strategist. I don't do strategery, but I do think we have to have that discussion. I think we have to say, like, look, at the end of the day, I'll be frank, like, there are people who definitely benefited from the Democrats getting elected, the pressure being alleviated on them. But for the vast majority of Americans, didn't make a damn bit of difference, right? Didn't make a damn difference who's been elected. There are certain cases where it's been, but you're on the border, you still have that. Look at Obama, right? We had this whole arbitrary war of terror. And then all Obama did was codify it, which is terrifying, right? Which was codifying this war on terror apparatus, which is like deeply problematic. So, I am totally open to the idea of, like, sometimes you've just got to suck it up and you've got to vote for the establishment liberals because the opposition is too dangerous, right? Like, too physically dangerous to you to contemplate. But at the same time, we have it's a difficult call to make.
It's just what's wrong-headed though is this idea is that, like, because, like, beyond like the defensive voting thing, like, there's this kind of there's an implicit argument here, right? Is like the Republicans by their nature are so dangerous to the lives of people and to working people that you have to eradicate them before you can build an opposition, right? And, like, look, you look at the states in this country, for example, that have the highest rates of inequality, right? It's states like New York, it's states like Connecticut, California has a higher inequality rate than Texas. Like, these are states that have had prolonged periods of, like, Democratic, dominance. I know it's not to say that, for example, like I don't have rent control here, you know what I mean? But this idea that you put those issues away is wrong. I mean, look at New York. They created the Republican Party within the Democratic Party, effectively under Cuomo, to serve that purpose. So, like, the idea basically that, like, you can, if we put them away, then we can then wage the struggle, I think is incorrect, because at the end of the day, the reason we're in this situation in the first place is because there is no working class like movement. There is no working class party, and there's no shortcut to building it. And again, like, this is why this conversation, maybe we'll do it again, but, like, it's so exhausting to me, because what it really comes down to at the end of the day, regardless of where you fall on it, right, is that, like, we got to build, like, something has to be done, something has to be built. And I'm sorry, neither option, in my opinion, actually builds that majority or that movement. And that's why I get so frustrated with the oxygen that this debate has. It's worthwhile having every once in a while, don't get me wrong. But it takes so much oxygen. None of it actually starts to lay the groundwork for building something different.
Yeah. By the way, I saw a comment in the chat that said had written an article advocating for Marianne Williamson. I certainly did not.
Also, I mean, this. I'm just going to say this real quick, like taking a little privilege as a host.
Michael
Ben,
Mayo.
I will just say it does not matter what you say, Ben. It doesn't matter what we say. You know what I mean? Like there will always be like it's amazing to me. You know, I don't know.
To me, though, like the question,
I said that Marianne should be allowed in the debates. I think that's a very different thing from a.
Well, that means you like her Zionism.
Yes, I understand for Palestine. Although I always have very mixed feelings when I think about that woman because that was like a very slight friction point with Michael. He liked her way more than I did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, like like question, like, do you do the vote harm reduction thing, or do you do the not? To me, it's still like it's back to the alternate point. Is like when people say that to me, it's like, okay, well, what else are you doing too? Like, because if it's just like I'm gonna always vote for Democrats, clearly we know that's not gonna do it. But if your main thing is like I don't vote for Democrats, it's like that's not that impressive.
No, it's the same. Right? I'm sorry, it's
exactly.
generally similar calculus, I think. Right. Yeah.
So like it is. It's just
I mean, look, I think that I'm not really interested in the sort of calculations of like how's my voting behavior going to put pressure on Democrats or whatever, because I just don't think that matters. I don't think that and that's actually kind of the flip side of why it's so ridiculous, going back to what David was talking about a little while ago about people who want to like blame Jill Stein for Hillary Clinton losing. For example, it was the raw charisma of Jill Stein, that doomed her campaign. I mean, obviously we've all talked about this before, but I mean, it's like, look, I'm from Michigan. Hillary Clinton managed to lose Michigan, which is a real accomplishment, actually, because Michael Dukakis, John Kerry, all these like famously like genius effective campaigners managed to win Michigan, and Hillary didn't. And it's like, okay, I mean, why is that? Like, well, she might have won anyway if she'd like devoted any resources to it, but also like there was a lot of disgust with the Clintons in Michigan for very obvious reasons, given the legacy of NAFTA, all of that stuff. There was a real lack of enthusiasm about her, and like people who like might have otherwise voted for a Democrat who didn't vote for Clinton, like, yeah, voting for Jill Stein was like so far down the list of the most popular ways of expressing that dissatisfaction on the ballot, right? Compared to all of the ballots in Wayne County, where Detroit is, or Genesee, where Flint is. Again, traditionally Democratic strongholds where people just left the top line of the ballot blank.
Mm-hmm.
There's way more of that, or fucking wrote in Mickey Mouse or whatever, or like just voted for Trump,
which is like
popular.
My mom left both of them blank in 2016.
Well, I mean,
but I mean, also, I just say like I forgot about the Hillary losing Michigan, a state that would years later repeal a right to work. So yeah, good job, Hillary.
No, I mean,
yeah, it's amazing. I was actually on election night in 2016. I was at the Chapo live show in Brooklyn, which was like a really weird thing to go to because they had it all planned out on the assumption that she was going to win. All the gags and everything, were oriented towards that. But like I remember like hanging out with people at the bar afterward and being like, hey, they keep saying one of the states Trump has to win to win is Michigan, but it's like, well, I know that's not going to happen because every election of my life, Michigan's always been trending Republican until the votes from Wayne County come in, and then it flips to Democrat. And it's like, yeah, no, I was wrong, but it's like yeah, there is a limit, like to like how shitty a candidate you can put it there and still expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, ultimately, we have to stop thinking of the Democratic Party as the left, right?
Oh yeah, I think
we have to,
like close to us.
Yeah, like as if like they're a estranged cousin.
Yeah.
We have to regard them that you have a liberal flank of the elite and a reactionary flank of the ruling elite. And there may be time, there are times where the reactionary flank is super dangerous, and you will rally to the liberals, but that's because we've already lost, as Ben says, because we're already in this kind of losing position. This is why this debate is so hard, is because it's within the context of our own powerlessness as a left, because we're basically playing 10-dimensional chess with politics that we have no effect on. It's, if you want to think of an analogy, it's like leftists fighting over whether they support Russia or Ukraine in the Russia or Ukraine war. It's like, it's like we don't have a freaking dog in that fight. It sucks. It's a sucky position. Why are we expending all this energy defending one side or the other, when instead of just focusing on what we need to do? And
it'd be a completely different conversation. For example, I'll just say this: it's a completely different conversation if, like, let's say there's 20% of the electorate, right, that is controlled by, or like not controlled, but like influenced by some institution organization, and that institution organization decides we're going to give our 20% to like the Democrats in this situation, or we're going to give our 20% to this third party in that situation, right? We don't have that. So what does it actually mean? It means millions, maybe let's not even over exaggerate, like thousands of us, individually walking into a polling place and making a decision on an individual basis, right? Instead of a collective one. And like at the end of the day, like on either side, right? If you're saying like we should support the Democrats in this instance, or if we should support a third party run, as long as it still is just a bunch of individual human beings walking into a polling place, making an individual decision, it is so far from like a real conversation, versus if it was something that was collectively decided, then you could say, oh, well, we're going to withhold our votes to get things from them if they don't, or we're going to do this to punish them if they don't. But outside of that, you are just creating a great narrative in your head about your activities representing something bigger. And like at the end of the day, it's just like, how do you build that kind of institution is sort of it. And it goes from which way you vote to like whether or not it's time, to like do a third party movement or something like that. It all comes down to the same question. It's like, do we have a left that's organized and has some institution structure or not? And like, no, we don't. And like, we have to build that. I think regardless of where you fall on that. Unless anyone else has any closing thoughts, we're going to go to calls and questions. Ben and Djene are more than welcome to stick around, hang out if you guys want to, but feel no pressure. We got a couple, and yeah, you guys are good to hang.
Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate you guys are so generous.
All right, well, let's get right to calls then. Here's the first call of the evening. Again, 6 calls. It took them early, so
wait, Matt, have you seen? We have 2 of those are doubles.
A Dylan one.
Dylan and Dave from Jamaica. So if you have doubles from same number, they both say play the second.
Okay, well, I'll have to check on Dave's maybe.
Okay.
Hey guys, it's Tom from Yakubia. I sent you guys an email with an image. What I want to talk about. It's a plaque by the Daughters of the American Revolution near my house about the Sullivan expedition. Matt probably knows what that is. Ordered by General Washington to clear out Pennsylvania and New York State of its native population. This plaque says, very interesting, in Sullivan's expedition, the march that destroyed savagery and opened the Keystone and Empire States to civilization. 4 brigades furnished by the states of Pennsylvania, et cetera, et cetera. It talks about Fort Sullivan, where they set up for their ethnic cleansing of this region. And I want to do some kind of a action on this plaque. And I'm thinking I'll just get something to put over the words and just raise attention to it, and also put some Haudenosaunee flags, or as you colonizers know it, the Iroquois flag. So to try and correct it like that. One of the things that really hurts me is even since I was a kid, there's a town right next to this plaque in Pennsylvania, and I'm sorry about that. The town has the high school's mascot is the same as what Washington football team used to be a few years ago. And they have no plans on changing it. And at the same time, I've got this plaque nearby that worships the savagery. Let me call again.
Oh, so, sorry, Tom, I didn't get that. Let me call again to the end there, but that's a troubling monument, and yes, that stuff is all over our country here. Let's do another one. Unless do you have a Discord, David?
We only have two. I have a first one. We only have one. One that's from Dylan saying his message is too long. Right click Robin Hood. This is a good one that we have Djene here for this. Who's your favorite non-leftist historian historical work?
That is a good question.
Well, I'll give you if you need a second. I
definitely do need a second. I mean, there's a lot of historians who, I mean, depends what you mean by leftist, right? There are plenty of non-Marxist historians who I find particularly valuable, in the terms of Middle Eastern history, people like Shukri Hanyolu, people like Janet Klein. They're not Marxists, but they do great history. I don't know. I don't know. Like there's, most historians are not Marxists, and there are plenty of good works of history written by none. Like Marshall Hodgson, I don't think is a Marxist, but he wrote one of the best books on the history of Islam, or series of books on the history of Islam that's been written. So there's a lot of fine non-leftist historians. I would have a difficult time, listing my favorite, but I think you can learn a lot from non-leftist historians. I think nothing beats a good bit of bourgeois scholarship that adheres to the rules of historical writing, that is honest and tries to be as objective as possible. And I think that's a ideal. I mean, in academia, that's an ideal that I think people should strive to. I said it to you, I think, before, on the main show. I don't believe in this activist scholarship stuff, because I think you can be an activist and a scholar, but I don't think you should use your platform as a teacher to be propagating like your political opinions. I don't think that's your job. And I think ultimately that degrades academia to a certain degree. I think people should be honest about their opinions, but when you teach, you should teach all different perspectives and ask people to make their own minds up. It's not your job to like impose something.
I mean, especially with history. But I'll say, like, to annoy Ben because they're French. One of my favorite, like, non-Marxist, but you could still categorize them as left, like, thinkers has always been Claude Lefort, who, in fairness, was like a Trotskyist who sort of turned against socialism, communism in general later. But like, he's always somebody who I've always enjoyed and got a lot out of reading. I mean, like, I just agree with. You should have never sort of like put up a hard wall in what you're interacting with. I think you can really hurt yourself by doing that generally.
Yeah.
All right.
I
go ahead, Ben.
Agree with strongly second Gene's comments, but just to he and David both kind of gave the wine track version of the answer, so I'll give the beer track and
hell yeah.
And list a non-Marxist history podcaster who's Mike Duncan, who did a really good podcast called The History of Rome, and then a really good one called Revolutions, with seasons on the English, American, French, and Haitian, and other revolutions until finally Russia in season 10. And I, honestly, I can't recommend that one strongly enough.
I mean, Sheila Fitzpatrick, a historian of Russia, is pretty good. She's definitely a kind of almost nihilistic liberal who hates revolution, but who has some excellent work on the Soviet Union, which challenges a lot of sacred cows, and which is based on extensive archival research. So I think people should be open to reading people who have different opinions. I think we live in a little bit of a censorious age, and because our political identities have become, and this is something Jason on TIR talks about a lot, because they've become like political brands, a form of self-expression. Then it's like, I don't read this person becomes a kind of badge of honor, when instead it's like, no, you should be reading everybody, including your political enemies, so you understand what their arguments are, rather than doing cheap characterizations and dishonest characterizations of people's opinion, which I see, or vast oversimplifications. So I think it's really important to keep an open mind in your intellectual endeavors, and just avoid this kind of ideological self-selecting, because doing that is kind of a demonstration of your own lack of convictions in your own opinions. So maybe don't be like that. Maybe be willing to engage with works that you don't politically agree with, and maybe take something away from them.
Absolutely.
All right.
Next one
here.
Hey, this is Subaru Socialist in Richmond, Virginia. I wanted to call about something that I think is dovetailing with the situation right now in Atlanta with Cop City. And I know there's other places around the country where there's similar kinds of things happening, but we have maybe a confluence of several different mimicking crises happening, very similar to Atlanta, happening in Richmond right now. One of them is almost identical. The city's planning commission voted down a plan to build a fire training facility for like a burn tower that you've seen. It's basically steel boxes stacked on top of each other. They light fires in, and firefighters can climb upstairs to practice in. The city's planning commission voted it down because they were going to locate it in a public park in a black part of town that doesn't have any public parks. It's the whole south side of Richmond is a paved over wasteland with the exception of a few parks, and it's where the majority of the poor black population lives. And they wanted to locate this fire training tower there. So the planning commission voted down, and then the city council overruled them and is seeking to build it there. And people gave 6 hours of negative comments at city council for days about it, and it still got passed through. I'll drop some links in the show topic request about this if you want to check it out. But it's pretty crazy, and it very similarly mimics this anti-democratic trend in democratic cities to enact neoliberal authoritarian type politics. The second thing I wanted to bring up, our mayor, who's also a Democrat, is seeking to rewrite our city charter in such a way that it is essentially the same as the charter under Jim Crow in the early 1970s. He wants to remove 3 city council seats, so go from 9 to 6, and he wants to insert himself or a future mayor into city council as a supermajority position on city council. And there's even a note in the commentary by the mayor that says basically the subcommittee that's recommending this charter change understands that these districts have striking similarities to the situation under Jim Crow. However, we believe that due to demographic changes, aka gentrification, they no longer reflect the singular communities of interest that had defined the Jim Crow era. So they're basically admitting that because there's no longer this strictly racial dynamic, which, by the way, they did, the gentrification that kicked those people out and has made the city no longer a majority-minority city, which it had been, I think, basically since the Civil War. And now they're seeking to reimpose the same sort of, electoral apparatus that had existed at that time. It's pretty wild, and there isn't actually anything in the newspaper about this. This is all just local activists that are putting it on Twitter, and we've got the receipts. We have the actual transcripts from these meetings. I'll throw it all into the show topic notes if anyone wants to check it out, but I think we need to be a little bit clearer about what it means to do harm reduction voting or vote blue no matter who in an era when the Democratic Party, especially in the South, is increasingly moving in an authoritarian direction. Thanks for taking my voicemail.
No,
Thanks for the call.
appreciate it. I'm sorry, it's tough. Yeah, it's just like the stuff that's happening in city governments across this country is really striking, and it's something that's like you can feel like you're banging your head against the wall to even get your local friends and comrades to keep up with, because it feels very esoteric, but it's like direct and extremely damaging and awful.
All right. Next one up here. We only got a few more left.
Hey guys, Dave from Jamaica. So I'll get quickly into it. The issue I have with the Cornel West run is it can't. I'm using the People's Party as a vehicle. Is that it kind of if you could achieve the same result if it's going to be a messaging campaign, which it seems to be, without having these barnacles attached to him. And if I'm to be a little harsh, as your interview with Alex kind of demonstrated with the issues that Corbyn have, is a lot of figures not realizing who their enemies are or who's dead weight. And if you're going to go for very powerful positions, one has to be able to, kind of recognize these things. And his inability to see the issues with the People's Party when it comes to his own credibility, right, is a bit concerning to me. That's just that aside. You need to. I see that as kind of a problem with the left. While we are supposed to be open-minded and forgiving and all of that, I agree. But we can't be so open till our brains fall out, right? So there's that type of balancing act you have to kind of work with. The other stuff I would want to ask Djene about is that with the situation in Turkey.
David, we're going to cut you off there because Djene is no longer there. But I do want to comment on the first bit. Like, look, I think Nick Brana is a dumbass on top of a whole bunch of other shit. I think he's like really stupid. Like he had this tweet that really drives me up the walls because like a whole is during COVID. A whole other side of this question is how the government is motivated to do a new Jim Crow out of vaccines. And guess what? Actually, the government was motivated to get your ass back to work. And so like if Cornel starts taking a Nick Brana approach to that topic, or other like Nick Brana-y, which like I think like was a libertarian-y approach, then I'll say like Cornel's brain's falling out. I think he's checked out. I don't think he's really on top of the People's Party stuff. I think he also has sunk a little bit of cost in there because he's been affiliated with the People's Party for a while, I think out of good intentions, and I just don't think like the personnel was there to back those up. But like I think you're right to like if someone's saying, hey, I'm gonna go like get in a car and go drive to join the People's Party, you say like, hey, yeah, slow your roll on that. But as far as like this is what it is, a messaging campaign, I think Cornel is probably the best messenger. He's better than RFK and Marianne to me. Yeah. So like that's where I'm judging it.
Yeah, I mean he's certainly better. I think Marianne's at least got some of the same domestic policy positions.
I appreciate the Harvey K influence there, of course. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously Cornel is vastly better on foreign policy and even vastly better on like identifying with the socialist outlook in general. And frankly, I just think just as a kind of a matter of persona and all that stuff, I mean, like I think again in the scenario where there was a real Democratic primary and B he was in it instead of running on this third party thing, I think like maybe he would have a little bit more he would have a little bit more potential than she would just like just in terms of galvanizing people. But also I don't like I really wouldn't blame him about like not I think that frankly I think that like to even know as much as I do about like the People's Party, you have to be way too online.
Yeah. Right.
No, I mean, totally. I mean, I will say, like, I mean, we've talked about this to the ends of the earth, so don't feel like reopening anything other than like, yeah, I do think like there's a part of that is a little generally worrying with the assumption of this being a serious run. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, that's not good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want you to have some more due diligence to be able to see through this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, we're just gonna like really like it's so early days. We're gonna have to see what this sort of ends up being. I think the general conversation about third party voting is sort of like where a lot of people's heads are at.
And I think part of that is like Post Citizens United, like there's a lot of money in that question. Like, what are you going to do with regards to vote? And like, it's just like, it really has gotten to be such the point of like how we judge things. And it's, again, like, I just think you got to not be concerned. And that's why I think you're right to say like and Gene's right to say like the defensiveness, like, you got to be willing to let people experience democracy and not try to be like, oh shit, these people might what if they go wrong? What if and it's like, there's nothing fruitful going to come out of that mindset.
Well, I know we have a call or two more, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Tom.
Also, I was going to say, I forgot the caller. Dave brought up RFK, and that guy shouldn't even be in the same conversation.
No, I don't think he's legit at all. I think, you know, beyond anything, let's just say, you know, drop all the other stuff that everyone gets worked up about with him. Look how quickly he rolled over for the Israel lobby. The idea that this guy is equipped to take down empire. Sorry, friend.
Yeah, no, well, absolutely. I mean, like, and I mean, honestly.
And for people, sorry, just for people who don't know, he put out a tweet in support of Roger Waters, who's being like maligned in public.
Smeared,
and he got some pushback against it and deleted the tweet, apologized for it, and said he didn't realize that Roger Waters had been dipping his toe into anti-Semitism. Right.
Which is insane. Like, that's just to like, it's actually nothing to do with anything that I said, but I found out some other information about him, which is that he's criticized Israel.
So, you know, I'm just saying, like, if you guys like
when he did the meeting with Rabbi Shmuley Botiach to do the sort of ritual apology for that, and at the end of the meeting agreed to like march in some like Israel parade the next day, next week. So it's like it's got the I mean it like the guy is like super duper pro-Israel and super duper afraid of being seen as not being pro-Israel. And also, by the way, just to layer up David's point, like he doesn't even support Medicare for all.
Yeah,
like
he can't even do that. So I don't know.
Hey, the assassination stuff. I'll just say I'll probably put him a slot below Marianne and Cornel, but that is something. I don't like the way he's doing it. I think I frankly think the authors of several books are probably better sources than this guy himself. But you know, well, and I mean, I can't even pretend, because we're not going to have a grown-up conversation about American assassination programs and whether or not they may have like rebounded here. We're just going to get conspiratorial stuff like JFK was assassinated because he made fat kids do gym from Tucker Carlson. So,
yeah, I actually remember when I was in New York, I asked you to come on the call-in show to talk about the JFK assassination, and you were going to do it, but then actually since then I got the when Rumble bought Colin, they like instantly terminated my contract there, so the assassination episode was itself been assassinated.
Oh man, gotta get Cal Canis on that.
Well, Tommy has a question for us, which is a broad one, so everyone can take a stab at it, which is between automation, education, and capital concentration on one hand, and the rise of left-right populism on the other, what would you speculate about the U.S./Europe in the next decade or two? Which obviously, you know, is
AI.
I mean, like, it's gonna be AI. Yeah, we're gonna be doing that.
Be all AI.
No, I mean, like, look, we don't know. It's really open. I mean, I think that there's a lot of different trends. Look, I think there's a very likely thing that we see a lot of austerity being rebranded as like pro-environmental policy, particularly in Europe. I think that's something that like we have to be really careful about and start promoting like a strong left-wing politics that like deals with the climate crisis, that reduces emissions but doesn't accept some of the framing that I think the Macrons of the world, we've already seen this is like, you know, the Gilets Jaunes, like part of this is gas taxes, right, which is putting the question of transition on the backs of working people, right? I think that's something that's definitely going to be coming up. But look, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. Like politics are going to be very weird for a long time to come, and they're going to be weird because we don't have definite class political organizations. So everything is sort of like trying to find different sections of the population that can get behind different kinds of things. And like, Lord, when you put that into play, like a lot of contingency, which is a fancy word for a lot of shit can happen.
Yeah, I'd bet on morbid symptoms. I think
We'll bet on morbid symptoms. And while we're
Well, I just saw today. As part of the questions about Europe, I just saw somebody say today that right now in Germany the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, which anybody's not familiar with that is an extremely creepy right-wing party in Germany. Far right party is outpolling the Social Democrats right now. So, like, you know, I think the morbid symptoms are multiplying.
I think so. Just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Difficile, for the super chat. And I'm just going to take a little bit of privilege here. Now, I'm just going to respond to Nadia on this because I think this is inaccurate. What do people think populism means? I think it's a very fair question because people use populism in a way that it completely evaporates its content and history. I mean, what does it mean? Like people's politics? I mean, what is the people? Blah, blah, blah. Totally agree. Like, it's very meaningless. But the actually existing American populist movement, it's a racist 19th century free silver thing. You should watch some of our stuff that we've done talking about the populist movement because I don't think that's a very accurate retelling of it.
Or Thomas Frank book.
No, the Thomas Frank book. You know, I've done a lot of stuff on some of the precursors to the populist movement in Texas, which was a movement that like failed many times, but oftentimes like opened up doors for like interracial solidarity, which is why it was such a threat to the system. It was the precursor to the socialist movement in this country, and you know, I'm sorry, like that lineage goes on, and like you see, for example, in the South, I'm working on a big piece for Jackman on this, that there was such a commitment to building a strong working class movement, but particularly like interracial movements in the South, that you had some of the first like real interracial working class communities that were planned by socialists and socialists who were members of the earlier populist movements, right? So in Mississippi, you had cooperatively run farms that were mixed communities, white and black, and they dealt with a lot of shit and threats and danger and attacks against themselves. So no, I don't think you know, it's correct to talk about these movements in that way because it ignores a lot of people who suffer tremendously for trying to build something else. I'm not saying there's never any examples of you know, people who did the opposite, but I don't think it's fair to paint with too broad of a brush with that at all.
Like, yeah, in the Thomas Frank book, The People Know, A Brief History of Anti-Populism, like he goes through a lot of these ideas about the original populists, even the People's Party, and you know, I think makes a pretty good case that, like, among other things, like, look, I mean, you know, it's a 19th century American political party. It's not like you can't find any racism if you're looking for it, but like it was probably the least racist.
Yeah, no, I mean impressively so. Which is why it was such. I mean, anyways. Hopefully my piece Jack will come out in the next couple of weeks. You can read it all there. Like pretty impressive and pretty fascinating history, but we'll get to that later.
All right. 3 more here, I believe, and I think we can hear Dylan's. Dylan, it might be too quiet. I don't know if this is it. No, this is not Dylan's.
Hey, everybody, it's Joe Snuffy. So, yeah, I actually don't have anything to really talk about for this week. I'm off at doing, you know, annual training stuff with the National Guard, working 12-hour shifts and sleep to 5 to 6. And, yeah, this is the first time in a couple of years where I genuinely have no idea what's going on inside in the outside world. I presume it's still, you know, it's moving on. There's probably some shit going on, but, yeah, just too tired. So, anyways, everybody have a good night. And this is the part where if I had a joke or like a catchy punchline or something, like something about like gigging them or something, I could use it. But unfortunately, I'm not that clever. So, all right, everybody have a good night.
Well, Joe, thank you for checking in. Otherwise, I would have worried where you are. And also congratulations on not knowing the news. I had food poisoning this weekend and also was out of the news. David texted me something like, "Hey, what about this West thing?" And I had no idea. I had to Google what he's talking about because I didn't know if Kanye's doing something again or what. It took me a while to get oriented. Here is, I believe, Dylan's call. Hopefully we can hear it.
Hey, Matt and David, this is Dylan from Australia. I thought I would leave a shorter message of my previous call, which was going to be about how Ben Roberts-Smith, an Australian, the head of the SAS, was very, very high up in the SAS, has been found civilly guilty of war crimes. He essentially...
Now, SAS stands for Super Army Soldiers. No, I'm not sure what it stands for. It's some British, maybe Australian, also Army Reserve unit or elite unit.
Newspaper reports about other people within the SAS unit saying that he was ordering soldiers to execute other people to blood them, which is kind of like, what, you're part of the SAS now because you've murdered a guy. We're all in this together. Anyways, he sued the newspaper, and in a spectacular own goal, the Commonwealth put a bunch of evidence, and they've called in the family from Afghanistan, and he was found civilly guilty of war crimes. Australia is having a really good conversation about he should keep his medals for all the war crimes he didn't commit. I really highly recommend looking into it. It's really interesting because he's kind of, as far as I know, one of the first ally soldiers for ally in terms of the Operation Iraqi Freedom and the Afghanistan war. It's very clear this person who's actually potentially going to be held accountable because he also engaged in witness intimidation. But as I said originally, it took me 3 minutes to say all that. But my question now is for Matthew. How do you live with your life without God in it? I know you've said many times that you're an atheist. You've lost, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, dwelling within you. And I just wonder whether or not, you are worried about, the direction of your immortal soul as you and Emma slowly work to betray Sam Cedar. Anyways, Gig'em Kings, keep the Aggie Nation alive. I know the coach, he's getting the boys ready at College Station for next season, this summer. So all the best to the boys down there in Texas. And yeah, take care, guys.
So I will just say, sorry, Matt, did you want to respond to this important?
I'll just say the direction my soul is going is the same direction it came from before I was born. I'm not worried about it.
Well, I will just say to our Australian listeners, big news in the city of Austin. The Western Australian government is opening its first and only investment and trade office in Austin, Texas, to invest in American corporations, particularly oil and gas, and some renewables.
South by Southwest.
Citing among other things the similarities between Texas and Western Australia. So I don't know. I always appreciate the Australian listeners of this program. I'm happy, I guess, that your government is taking an interest in our local economy here as well.
Man. Yeah, you don't think about Western Australia that much, actually, do you? What's over there?
I think about it all the time, Matt. What do you think?
Which part of Australia was Crocodile Dundee from?
That's a good question. I think it's from the Uluru. No, that he wouldn't be allowed there. I don't know what the politics are. Anyway, final call of the evening.
Hey guys, it's Jack from Montclair. Thanks for plugging the Right to Counsel campaign over in Jersey City for me last week. I'll try to drop some links in the Discord around the time the postgame's on. So I had something else I was planning to call in about, but I was walking up to my polling station for the contested primary that only exists because of redistricting when I saw that the sun is half blocked out and everything smells like smoke and the sky is full of smoke from the fires going on up in Canada. So I just wanted to tell any listeners up there, I hope you're all right. I hope you're taking care of yourself. And yeah, I hope this is done soon because it's spooky getting smoke from something so far away. looking forward to the show tonight. And have a great night.
Thanks for the call. It was fucked up.
Yeah.
The
Wait, so
sky
you guys
here.
are having a bad smoke there?
Yeah, so like there's a haze, and I've seen this before. In North Dakota, we'd regularly get wildfire haze. I haven't seen it in New York, but like walking home, a little bit of, sore throat type of feeling, but
Yeah.
also the sky, like, and like the wind was really whipping before we started the show tonight, and the sky was like orange, and I like to check the radar because I'm like, are we getting a weird storm or something? Nothing, nothing on the radar at all. So everything's probably fine. I'm sure we're doing well here. Yeah, check out our conversation with Jeremy Apple to get the direction of Albertan politics for some of those wildfires. I think these are Ontario wildfires, but anyway.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for chilling. Everyone who joined us.
Thank you, Ben.
This open, and thank you, Ben, and thank you, Djene.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of you. If you did get into this on the free side, consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/leftreckoning. We do this every Tuesday. And honestly, like it's nice to get folks in because I don't think people realize the post game is a little chiller than the main show. They're both good, but don't miss out. Sign up patreon.com/leftreckoning. Thursday, I'll be talking with Chip Gibbons about Edward Snowden. I think we're going to be talking about rural politics this weekend for the bonus episode. We got Nick French, Jacobin writer, on the program next week to talk about why, if you care about social justice, you should be a Marxist, and much, much more. Appreciate everyone so much, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.